Time to have some fun here on the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee with the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. I mentioned my next guest's presentation at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine every single time I plug the conference for a reason, and that is because the topic is absolutely, positively, unequivocally fascinating beyond belief. Talking about gut microbiome, gut bacteria, that is among the most popular topics here on the Exam Room. And with that, we welcome back Dr. Lee Frame. She is, I have this written down now, the Director of Integrative Medicine at the George Washington School of Medicine and Health Sciences. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be back.
I'm very glad that you are sitting next to me. Your presentation, the title, Nutrition and the Gut Microbiome. Where are we now? Where are we going? As a refresher for those who didn't listen to our first interview, where are we now?
That's a great question. So we're kind of in this weird fuzzy space right now. Well, we're starting to understand things. For instance, fiber is really important for the microbiome, and the microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids, which are really important for the health of your gut bugs, your gut, and you. But much beyond that, we are really just beginning to understand it. It's not clear. We don't really know the relationships, but things are emerging, and it's very exciting. And I think maybe in the next 5 years, we're going to get a better understanding and really start to have this field blossom.
All right, so I'm going to give you $1 million idea right now. Your gut bugs, your gut, and you, write a book, bestseller, instant.
I would love to write a book, actually. I love writing.
Yeah. So fiber, you're just talking about that. Like that seems to be such a critical component of overall health. I mean, just basically every part of your body, right down to your fingertips.
Absolutely. It seems like the one sure bet you can say to almost everyone to increase your fiber intake. Mm-hmm. Like you're probably not getting enough, so just increase your fiber intake and you will be better off.
It is shockingly low how little fiber there is in the standard diet.
Yes. And part of that's because people eat a lot of processed foods, refined grains, things that don't have the fiber in them, where if you're eating whole foods and unprocessed things, that fiber's still there.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you, one of the more popular diets on the market right now, and I'm going to put that in quotes, is the keto diet. You think keto, low carb, not a whole lot of fiber there. I mean, what is that doing to the gut?
Yes, so there haven't been a ton of studies on that, but it is a very low fiber diet, and so I feel very comfortable saying that long-term that diet is not going to be healthy for your gut microbiome. You need fiber to have a healthy gut microbiome. It is literally the fuel for your microbiome. So if you're not fueling them, they will not be running, and if they're not running, you're not running.
Right. All right, so eat that fiber, boys and girls. Super, super important. All right, so we asked, where are we now? Where are we going?
Where are we going? So there's so many places we can go because the research has really been focused on fiber, which is great. Fiber's wonderful. We just talked about that. But there's so many more components to food than that. One of the areas I'm really excited about is phytochemicals, or phytonutrients. Mm-hmm. They're the chemical compounds that are naturally found in plants, and a lot of them have been linked to health benefits like prevention of heart disease, prevention of cancer. One of the ones you may be familiar with is called resveratrol. It's found in red wine. It's also found in a little bit in white wine, but
I think that about 3/4 of our listeners just raised a glass and said cheers.
Exactly. So that's why people tend to be familiar with that one. And there is a little bit of research coming out showing that it's beneficial. And let me back up. It's not only is resveratrol beneficial for your microbiome, but red wine is beneficial.
Okay.
There's actually been a study trying to tease out whether it was these phytonutrients, if it was the alcohol, what was it about red wine that made it good for your microbiome? And the answer really is it's it as a whole food.
Really?
It's the wine as a whole food. It's not the alcohol, it's not the phytonutrients, it's them interacting together as a food matrix.
So, I mean, you can't get the same effect by drinking grape juice?
No.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
You would think, you're still going to have a positive effect. It's just the effect that they show with wine is vastly stronger. And much more than you would predict by just simply adding the different effects together. It's what we call synergism.
Interesting. And it's not the alcohol.
It's not.
So, say somebody prefers beer. Like, how is that going to affect the microbiome?
You know, I haven't really looked at beer, but it's going to have a different effect. There are definitely some polyphenols, but they're different polyphenols, so different chemical compounds. Beer has different nutrients in it, and B12 is actually quite important for the microbiome. So I could see that being very beneficial. But yeah, it's going to be a different animal.
That's crazy. The last time you were on the show, I'm just going to pivot and go in a completely different direction here. The last time you were on the show, you were explaining to us how advancements in DNA research are actually driving gut microbiome research. Real quick, can you recap the parallel there for us?
Absolutely. So before, when we were trying to study the gut microbiome, we were using classic culture techniques. You take bacteria, you plate them on an agar plate, you watch them grow, you figure out what kind of bacteria they are. But a lot of the bugs that live in our gut don't grow out in the oxygen environment that we like. So once you take them out of the gut, you can't culture them on a plate like that. So we literally couldn't study them. There was no way to study them. But now we have relatively inexpensive and quick tests where you're just looking at the genetics of who is there. So we're just looking at their genomes, and we can identify bacteria based on their genomes. So now it doesn't matter if they're alive, whether they like oxygen or not, we know that they're there. And that allows us to ask questions that we never were able to ask before.
Right on. Like what? Like
well,
what? Come on.
Like what?
Like
well,
what?
if you were on a low fiber diet, what does your gut microbiome like? And then what happens when we put you on a high fiber diet?
Ooh. How rapidly does that gut microbiome change?
That's a great question. So the gut microbiome is actually fairly stable in terms of you have like a temporary dietary change, it will go back to its normal, but it also does actually respond to each meal.
Really?
Right. So if you're feeding them, they're going to get happy and multiply. So you gave them some fiber this meal, it will look different. But you have to kind of maintain that over a period of time for it to really be a permanent change.
Wow. Okay. Learn a little something new every day. I just want to keep bouncing around because it's like such a fascinating topic how it can control like so many facets of your being, like right down to your mood. Like if your gut bacteria is not happy, you're not happy.
It's true.
I mean, what's the correlation there? You know, why is there this hot wire between what's going on down here and what's going on up here?
Yes, that's the gut-brain axis, which is really hot in science right now, in part because we didn't really know that it existed. It wasn't until we started studying these bugs that we really realized what was going on there. And actually, about 80% of your neurotransmitters are produced in the gut.
Really?
Which kind of blows your mind,
Yeah.
doesn't it? And there is a nerve that directly connects your gut to your brain. So those neurotransmitters are reacting with that nerve and directly communicating with your brain.
Is that why we hear so many times a person who goes on a plant-based diet and they've been on antidepressants for so many years, they change their eating habits, suddenly they don't need the antidepressants?
Absolutely. Yes, fiber is something that's required for production of serotonin in the gut. So if you aren't getting enough fiber, you're not producing enough serotonin, and you will not be happy.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, there are obviously other reasons you could be depressed, but that is probably the methodology that I would say is describing what you're saying there.
Right.
They went from a probably fiber-poor diet to a very fiber-rich diet, and now they no longer needed their antidepressants.
Does the same hold true for, I guess, other? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but then I'm thinking like, okay, well, what if somebody's got bipolar disorder or something like that? Is that a little bit different?
It probably is different, though I will tell you there are people who are doing research on that because it's possible that they have a dysbiosis that could be treated. And maybe nutrition won't be powerful enough to reset that, but I will tell you nutrition probably will help. And it will probably be important in that process because even if you reset the microbiome in some therapeutic way, for instance, a fecal transplant, you're still going to need to feed those bugs. So you're still going to need that fiber diet.
Right. Fecal transplants, those are, the fact that you can actually do those, one, that blows my mind. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so the fact that, that's even getting brought up here is like, wow, she really just said that, and wow, that's really a thing.
It is a thing.
So,
though it may be a thing of the past because there are companies that are trying to make that obsolete.
Okay.
By making a pill version of essentially a super probiotic.
Right on.
So they're taking the fecal out of the transplant.
Is that temporary, though? I mean, because it goes in, I would imagine what goes in must come out.
Right. So it depends. Typically, it's given with broad-spectrum antibiotics. So
Okay.
you're, in theory, wiping out what was there before, and the new microbiome that you're delivering should colonize.
Okay.
Not that always happens. There's a small fail rate, but it's pretty small.
Well, antibiotics then. So let's do microbiome 101. Somebody goes on antibiotics, say they've got a sinus infection or something like that. You know, they get a 10-day prescription of amoxicillin or Augmentin, whatever the case may be. What does that do to gut bacteria?
So we aren't entirely sure because we haven't specifically studied that very much. But like I said, the microbiome is fairly resilient. So for a short period of time like that, it will bounce back.
Right on.
You go back to your healthy diet, you'll be fine.
Right on.
It's when you have these long-term, like for instance, someone who's using antibiotics for acne.
Yep.
That's where you really get concerned because they're never giving their microbiome a chance to bounce back.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's going to be beyond return.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard of people who go on antibiotics long term and they're okay for a little while, and then suddenly they just have all sorts of stomach
Yes,
issues.
exactly.
You know, and I mean like pain, like pain you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy.
Right.
What research is being done right now that you're particularly excited about? What are you really keeping a close eye on?
It's a good question. Actually, it's
Put you right on the. I mean, you can name multiple studies that are going on if you
something
want.
really interesting that I just heard about that's kind of tangentially related. It's not like super related. Is there's a company that is designing antibodies that are going to go in and get rid of one type of bug, one specific strain.
What?
So rather than giving you an antibiotic that could potentially wipe out your whole microbiome,
Yeah.
we give you this very targeted antibody that will go in and eliminate whatever bug is making you sick.
Really?
Yes. So then we won't even
Yo.
have to worry about how long you're on antibiotics.
Right? Okay, so then my follow-up to this is, and I mean, feel free to dodge this question like it's a game of dodgeball. We hear about this resistance now to antibiotics. If we're able to drill drugs down to that type of level, would that help alleviate some of the drug resistance that we're experiencing?
Absolutely. Part of the reason we have resistance is because the bacteria are being exposed to the antibiotics. And so if we remove that selective pressure, to use an evolutionary term, they're not going to need to make those genes anymore, and they won't be beneficial to them, so they'll just stop making them.
Right on.
The genes are very thrifty. If something isn't benefiting them, they're going to throw it right out.
Right.
So that will no longer be beneficial for them. They're going to get rid of it. They'll stop making it. And so when we do need to use antibiotics for some reason, we don't have something that's super targeted like that, they could be more effective.
Is this research, it's pretty early stages right
Super
now?
early
Super
stages,
early?
yeah.
All right, so don't expect to see that one released next week.
No,
Bummer.
unfortunately.
I'll keep an eye on it, though. That's
Yeah.
really... Do you know who's working on that?
It's actually a company called Scaled Microbiome Therapeutics.
Okay. Never heard of them.
Yeah, they're a small company. I actually just met them in Boston at a conference a few months ago.
A Boston company. Okay. Maybe take
That's the hotbed of microbiome.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's where all the industry is.
Beantown. Fiber.
I go to Boston all the time. Yeah, there you go. Beantown Fiber. I like it.
That's cool. So what, is it just like a bunch of small people, or I know that, they have wonderful universities up that
Yeah,
way
it's
as
a lot
well?
of MIT and Harvard folks.
Yeah. That would
A lot of
explain it.
MIT because it's definitely more on the technical side of things.
Right on. What are you guys working on right now at GW? Like your
Yeah.
programs, what's going on?
Yeah, so we're definitely working to start a research program. I am setting up a clinical trial, which I'm really excited about, looking at the delivery of vitamin D via the skin versus via a pill in the mouth,
Ooh.
and how that affects the microbiome of the gut versus the microbiome of the skin.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
That is
I'm really
fascinating.
excited
When
about
does
that
when does all that ramp up?
Soon. I'm in that indefinite, I don't know when I'm going to start phase
Okay.
because, things are in contracts, but soon.
Okay. Are you going to use students, or are you going to need recruitment, or
I will probably need recruitment because this one is going to be healthy adults.
Okay, healthy adults. Well, I happen to know quite a few of them working in this office.
Yeah, there are a lot of healthy people here. Yeah.
All right. Final word is all yours. Anything you want to put out there that we haven't talked about as far as the microbiome?
The microbiome. Well, I just stay tuned and definitely listen to the GW podcast because we're going to be doing some things.
There we go.
On that and our upcoming Sung Symposium. Listen for that. There'll be some ties to the microbiome. And actually, if you missed it, our last Sung Symposium is archived on our website, so you can watch it freely available.
The website is?
And it is the
Online?
Online. We'll have to get back to you on that. It's long, unfortunately. But it's on there, and that has the gut-brain connection, the microbiome. So if that piqued your interest, check that one out.
Well, I guarantee if they're listening to this conversation, it'll pique the interest. That's really cool. So, all right, Dr. Lee Frame, thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Fascinating as always.